Dear friends of Consortium for Sustainable Urbanization, thank you for joining us today for the Participatory and Resilient Governance, the case of Ankara Citizen Council book. We are delighted to publish this book at CSU. I am Aliye Pekinçelik, founder, former president and chair of the board. I worked on issues related to sustainable cities, both at the United Nations and United Cities and local governments for many years. Consortium for Sustainable Urbanization is an NGO accredited to ECOSOC of the United Nations. Our objective is to promote the Sustainable Development Goal 11, SDGs 11, on sustainable urbanization. In a rapidly urbanizing world, 2.5 billion people will be moving to urban areas in the next 30 years. These cities are far from being sustainable, struggling with governance, financial, overcrowding, immigration, and mobility problems. While climate change is making our planet more dangerous every day. As a result, people who dedicated their lives to improving the living conditions have to work on innovative solutions. Today, we have an example. Today's lecture is about the book we published on a good practice on localization of SDG 11. Ankara municipality achieves sustainability through partnership, cooperation, participatory and resilient urban governance, a type of governance that gives us hope in the leadership of urban areas in economic, environmental, social, and cultural development. I am proud to introduce you Professor Dr. Sabar Shahin, who is an experienced urban planner and professor of urban planning and politics. He participates in international projects in different capacities and contributed to developing citizens' assemblies in Turkey. He got several national and international awards for his work. We are honored to have Bilkent University Professor Emeritus in Urban Design, Dr. Feyzan Erkip, CSU Ankara correspondent, with us today. She has many national and international publications and awards. Her research at Bilkent and Technological Research Council of Turkey included urban resilience and governance. Without further ado, I am giving the floor to Professor Shahin. Professor Shahin, the floor is...
Hello, Aliye. Thank you very much for inviting us. I think Feyzan will start first, and then...
Okay, so Feyzan.
Yeah, if it's okay with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for joining us. Actually, I don't want to take much time. I am sure Zafer has a lot more to say on this subject. I would like to thank Aliye, who encouraged us from the start of this project, and the CSU for the publication, of course. If I may share the screen a little bit, I will try to explain why I prefer the resilience perspective. I have been working on this topic for maybe the last decade, and of course it is not the only perspective who may explain or analyze what Citizen Council of Ankara has been trying to achieve for maybe 5 years. But this is one of them, and I would like to show you a few slides, and I don't want to take much time on this, so let me start showing you them. If it is
Paylaşabiliyor musunuz
okay.
hocam? Açayım mı ben?
Yes, please. I will do that, I guess. Yes, I think I can share it, Zafer.
Ben o
Is
zaman
it okay?
kapatıyorum. Evet.
Can you see it now?
Yes, we would be able to see it once you share.
Okay, thank you. So this is
Hocam
why.
sunum açılmadı sizin.
Oh, okay. Let me try again. No. Now can you see it?
No, I can open it for you if you like.
Yeah, it would be, yeah, if you can do that.
Okay, I'm opening
that's
it
okay.
now.
That's okay. You have that. I'll try to share it, but
Yes.
somehow.
Okay,
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
it's open now.
Okay, thank you. So I will start with a few words on resilience. I am sure everybody is familiar with the concept. I have been, as I said, I have been working on this in the last decade. And if we continue with the okay, second slide. It is usually used for as a new version of sustainability, in a sense, proposed by many global institutions like UN Habitat, the World Bank, the OECD. And for the urban researchers, it almost became a buzzword, but I think it should be tested in different contexts, like Ankara, for instance, Ankara situation, Ankara case. I don't want to go into the detail of the concept, of course, but the last there is a huge literature on this topic. But the last paragraph here in the figure, the resilience concept refers to the capacity of system to absorb disturbances and reorganize and, in a sense, bounce back to the previous balances or create new balances under the circumstances, under the conditions. It is, of course, an attractive concept when we consider the complexity of the urban situations, because it provides us the opportunity to think with new understandings or with flexible approaches. And the perception, why is it is more appropriate in the case of Ankara, in my opinion, this is the perception of resilience within the limits of the existing local government system, which restricts such flexibility in a sense. For instance, if we take sustainability as an aim for the urban planners or local government institutions, they try to achieve it within a rigid system. So it provides us only physical aspects of the sustainability, but we also need social and institutional aspects to be considered. So the main components of urban resilience, as you can see here, they are much easier to be adopted in or applied in relation to the physical environment. But when it comes to the social balances, social, economic, institutional balances, these aspects are overlooked because of the difficulty of making the concept operational in certain cases, in particular contexts. Let's continue a little bit. There are, in the Turkish case, but in general, actually, maybe all over the world, in certain countries, there are certain obstacles against the resilience, a resilient institution, a resilient social structure. For the Turkish conditions, we have multi-level government system. So there is the national government, central government, metropolitan cities. We have a lot of metropolitan cities, so there is a greater municipality and also district municipalities. And depending on the interest groups, unfortunately, they are very dominant in the urban planning system in Turkey. If these different levels of governments are are governed by different parties, political parties, let's say, different ideologies, there are a lot of conflicts in their coordination and their collaboration. This is one aspect. Also, the rigidity of the bureaucratic structure of local government. In general, the authoritarian decision-making structure, so it limits the participation. Usually people are discouraged by learned helplessness in the decision-making process because they can't help, they can't contribute to what is going on in the urban planning system. Let's have another one, please. But also, as a theoretical structure, there are favorable circumstances. Some of them are also valid for the Turkish situation. For instance, citizen councils have a legal basis. They have laws providing us the opportunity to establish citizen councils in the urban structure. Well, later on, Zafer, I'm sure he will talk about why we don't achieve this aim all the time. In general, we require a positive attitude of local authorities, especially leaders and the mayor. This is researched also, and there are a lot of examples from the world claiming that especially the mayor of a municipality influences the participative processes a lot, because if he's or she is favorable to participation, then it is easier to achieve this kind of resilience in the institutional structure. Of course, we are talking about a bottom-up approach, just as the opposite of the Turkish situation for the time being, but with a bottom-up approach requires an impartial and informal learning process, including the local authorities, researchers, and citizens. This is what I define as the resilience at the institutional level, because a resilient system can cope with this complexity of the participants and stakeholders in a city. Now, if we talk about Ankara, I will stop. I mean, I don't want to talk much about the Ankara Citizen Council, but Ankara's primary identity is being the Turkish Republic's capital city. It represents the formation of a new regime as a departure from the Ottoman Empire. So this very identity creates a lot of conflict between different ideologies in Turkey, because there is the Republican groups and supporters, and also maybe I wouldn't say anti, but there are different groups requiring a different type of governance, government structure. So within the last decades, we observed this in Ankara because it became a very contested space of being the Republican capital. Because, for instance, within the last 25 years, it has been governed by a mayor, very autocratic. I mean, maybe it is better to call it like egocentric mayor. So it blocked all participative efforts and all citizen participation, and it contributed a lot to this learned helplessness. Also, people became more eager to change things because they don't have a say on their city's future, city's identity. So it creates a demand for an arena for resisting this domination of a single person or a single ideology in the city. So what we need is a radical change in urban governance. Institutional aspects are important. Learning from experience, being flexible and open to change for resilient urban policies and actions, regardless of political ideology. This is what we need actually to become uh, equal citizens of uh, an urban place, of a metropolitan city like Ankara. So Ankara case after 2019 elections, because the government changed hands at that period, it created some hope in that respect, because new mayor seems to be positive to collaborate with its citizens, the Ankara citizens, and to the other stakeholders of Ankara. So it is kind of a new era, in my opinion. But of course, now we are expecting a new local elections. It's coming soon, within a month or so. So we can just we only hope that it will continue. This hopeful period will continue after that as well. Um, I have another one, I guess. Zafer. Now, seeing the Ankara Citizen Council's efforts within the last years created a vitality in that sense, vitality in people's engagement, citizens' engagement in their cities' problems and cities, Ankara's decisions or planning system. But I think the resilience is maybe the last word about resilience could be that we need to be prepared for bouncing forward sometimes instead of bouncing back all the time. So it creates a new balance, but we always, I mean, in my opinion, Ankara is quite resilient. Many Turkish systems are resilient, but resilience is not uh, a, like all the concepts maybe is not always positive. You need to find different solutions, more out of the box solutions many times, especially in case of Turkish cities. So preparation, flexible understanding of government, and preparation to get to be ready for the future. I mean, ready for crisis, ready for global changes, I mean, physically or socially, it is very important. So I hope and think that Ankara Citizen Council proved to be instrumental toward this aim. And I am hoping that it will continue after the new elections coming. So that's all I want to say. I will stop here, and I'm sure Zafer has a lot more to talk about Ankara Citizen Council.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you very much, Faizan. Professor Shahin, please let us hear you.
Thank you very much, Faizan. I think that paved the ground for my talk. Actually, it's very challenging for me because it's not an easy task to tell the story of 5 years in maybe half an hour, but I'll do my best. To start with, as an academician and as an urban planner, this experience, the Ankara Citizen Council, was worth a lifetime experience, actually. And it was so many details, so many things to tell. I just had to pick them up. I made a selection, actually, to tell you the story of Turkey. I also would like to thank CSU, Aliye, Rick, and all the other people in the organization to make this possible, because usually what people think about Turkey is limited to mostly Erdogan and what he's been doing. But it's a huge country. Turkey is a very big country, and many things are happening, including especially the participation and democratic endeavors. It's not an easy task, as Faizan told us, but there are things happening. But the relatively closed structure of my country, it's not always an easy task to tell other people all around the world that interesting things are happening in the Turkish case. I'll start with the picture in the screen. You can say that it's a very interesting picture because people are gathered, still wearing the masks. Obviously, this is a picture from the COVID-19 period. It was a very challenging time for us because at the same time, both people was wanting to come together to deliberate on issues, but there was also the restrictions on people's coming together. We find a middle ground and try to bring people together, and we saw interestingly, an unprecedented number of people came together, and it was a very exciting event for us. This picture shows us that the people's willingness to deliberation when provided the necessary opportunities. Let me start with some of my ideas about the times we are facing. I think there are crises, and these crises are becoming increasingly complex with many layers. And interventions against these crises are diminishing in legitimacy. And the decrease in faith in these interventions decreases the likelihood of seeing the results of these interventions. And the way we think about towards this crisis is evolving. First of all, the concepts like deliberation, resilience, carries a tone of political correctness. But later on, we face the post-truth period, and now, as I think the Dryzek, the author, he calls this time diabolical times. And people defend even the evilest positions, even if they don't believe it. So what are the solutions we are offered? As Faizan told, we will having elections in a couple of months, and we see generic concepts and processes everywhere, and there are heroes of democracy, local democracy, and nothing can be really questioned. There are limits to deliberations. And usually we debate, not only in Ankara, but also in the whole Turkey, that we need a new way of thinking based on real people, real problems, real data and values, and there should be a solidarity perspective and a new understanding of power that inevitably has also an aesthetic dimension. So, in those terms, why and how do we define the participation? Sometimes it's seen as a form of self-actualization. In academic terms, it's seen as a ladder sometimes. It is a culture, a ceremony, a ritual, or a set of behaviors, a process sometimes, a way of life, a way of existence, etc. But in our experience, we see that there are 5 phases of participation and deliberation. First, you need to deliberate in defining and discussing the urban problems, and then you deliberate in defining urban policy options. There are many options. If you can't see the options, you cannot deliberate on aesthetic options and implementation. And if you can do that, you can discuss the technical options for the implementation of these urban policies. And at the end, deliberation in the implementation and reevaluation of urban policy becomes an option for you, and it's like a cyclical process actually. And we, in our case, at the very beginning, we try to define deliberation in this 5 phase circular fashion, not thinking only in terms of just deliberating on the problems or the implication, but if possible, all of them. So let's, Faizan told a little bit, but I'll try to give you a wider picture of the history of participation in Turkey. There is always, from the late Ottoman period to the Second World War, we call this period the early Republican nation building period. There is this constitutionalism debate always. What will be the constitution? What type of constitution? What will be the rights of the citizens, etc. And there is this notion of westernization, starting with Mustafa Kemal Atatürk's reforms. And the capital building, Ankara, the city of Ankara, has a very significant part in it, because we know that in historical records, many of the discussions in the National Assembly was about how to establish a national capital apart from Istanbul. So this was also related to how the citizenship, how the new life, the life of a citizen will be formed, etc. There are educational aspects, and even today, these aspects are seen as some type of emancipation, some type of a base for the participation. There are some practices of early Republican period, like people's houses, where people go and practice arts and Western type of lifestyle, and village institutes, which is seen as an example of how people are educated, learning not only the scholarly things, but things related to the real life. Later on, after the Second World War, Turkey passed to a multi-party political life, and participation became a politicized thing. And there emerged 2 types of actually participation. On the one hand side, there are the right-wing clientelism, patronage type of participation, and on the left-hand side, there is this left-wing populism. We see that in these years, just before the 1980s, we can see that the first social democratic municipal movement. There are some interesting examples. For instance, Fatsa, a very small district municipality on the Black Sea region of Turkey, which in 1970s declared neighborhood associations a radical participatory local government experience. These are these are some of the parts of the Turkish participation repertoire. And after 1980s, we can see 2 different periods. At first, till the start of 2000s, there is this decentralization, centralization pendulum. At the beginning, the Turkish state became decentralized by giving many responsibilities and authorities to the municipalities. But later on, in 20 years, it was taken back. And again, it became a centralization movement. The squatter amnesties, and as there was this still the EU, European Union hope was there still. Turkey was hoping to become a European Union country. So the policy learning from outside, especially in issues like participation, was very still hot. But in the last 20 years, there was the second wave of neoliberalization. Again, it started with a decentralization wave, this time targeting the urban transformation, especially of the large cities, and citizen councils, which I'm going to talk about, became an official structure at the beginning of the 2000s. And metropolitan governance became stronger, but politically, there was also substantial changes. The Islamic coup, failed coup, caused an ultra-centralization wave at the end of the period and a regime change. Now we have this so-called Turkish-style presidential system, and this caused a participation vacuum, so to speak. People, it's becoming extremely difficult for an ordinary citizen sometimes in Turkey to find a participation channel, and people are in search for new secular solidarity networks, actually, which caused some new civic movements to emerge in the quite recent times. So what is a citizen council? I'm sure you're all curious about that. Actually, it's not a city council. Usually, Turkish authors make the mistake to translate Turkish kent konseyi, the term, to English as city council. But that's wrong, because we all know that city council is an elected local parliament. It is not that. Or it's not a citizen assembly as we see all around the world and in Europe, because the citizen assembly is usually, apart from the exceptions, is usually a short-time, temporary, sortition-based organization. So citizen council is not that also. A mix of both, actually, a semi-structured participatory mechanism. It starts like this: after local elections, the mayor calls for a general assembly to the representatives of all the universities, associations, foundations, muhtars, which are neighborhood administrators, political parties, unions, chambers, etc. And these representatives came together and elected a president and an executive committee. This president and executive committee organizes working groups and the assemblies for policies to be deliberated. And at that phase, ordinary citizens also can participate in these working groups and assemblies. The cost of participation is covered usually by the municipality by law, and a citizen council can recommend advisory decisions to the elected city council. The city council have to take them into their agenda and discuss about. So what are the challenges up to now for a citizen council? Since it is started by the mayor after each election, mayor's support is a must and makes it dependent to the mayor's attitude, actually. Some mayors do not make this call, thinking that citizen councils might be a political threat to them, or use his close political colleagues in establishing one, taming the citizen council, so to speak. There is not an independent budget, an official body, and this might be an advantage sometimes or a disadvantage. Under extreme politicization and polarization, it became difficult for a citizen council to deliberate for the city sometimes. And the last challenge is, I can tell many other ones, but the generally main ones are these: local politicians and bureaucrats might not take citizen council seriously every time. So what happened up until now? There are now 1,400 municipalities in Turkey, and in theory, there should be 1,400 city councils. But at best, there are approximately 400, and they are unstable and fluctuating. I mean, one term, a mayor will be keen on establishing one. There is a good period, and the other mayor comes and doesn't like the idea and don't give the call. So most of these existing ones in prosperous large cities, and in spite of this, they are still there. And from time to time, there emerge very successful ones all around the city, free from the political party or other types of influences. Currently, there are mayors, city council members, and politicians who were once taking part in these citizen councils. There are also two unofficial unions for these citizen councils, and against all odds, all and political turbulence, citizen councils are still functioning as a buffer mechanism between local politics and the citizen. What other you might think? What are other participation channels there apart from the citizen councils? There are various types of civic participatory initiatives in Turkey, some of which are also related to citizen councils, because when you start doing something for participation, I'm sure you can think of that they become related at some point. There are neighborhood associations. There are digital civic platforms on the rise. There are some thematic civic participation platforms. Participation is defined as a must in strategic planning process of public institutions in law. There are participatory urban planning initiatives and gender mainstream and women's initiatives. And there, lastly, after the Syrian refugees, there is this migrant initiatives as well. So let's come to Ankara. I'm checking my time. I think I'll try my best to wrap it up in 10, 15 minutes. Parallel to Turkey's experience, the Ankara's experience started in 1970s under the Social Democratic municipality. There was people consultancy processes defined and realized in those years. And in 1990s, there happened a second social democratic municipality experience. And in that time, the term project democracy, trying to achieve deliberation within project development, urban projects, is another attempt. And in 1990s, at the same time, as a result of local agenda 21 habitat 2 conference tools, the local agenda 21 offices were opened in the city. But as Faizan told, after 2000s, there was a significant participation vacuum in the city because the mayor was clearly anti-participation. He was a very charismatic person, and he was an autocrat, actually, and he was very famous for his clashes and his fights with the universities, with the chambers, with the professionals who criticized him and his doings in the city. And he actually called citizen council in 2009 and 2014, but these were just for the sake of, for the sake of doing what has been written in the law, actually. So, for instance, in the 2009, he appointed his right-hand man as the president of the Citizen Council, and in 2014, he again appointed one of his close associates as the president of the Citizen Council, and basically nothing happened. Although there was in title, there was a Citizen Council, nothing happened. And again, as Fezan told, after the 2019 local elections, there was an incredible expectation towards the new mayor named Mansur Yavaş. His name is Mansur Yavaş, and actually one of the reasons he's been elected was his promises to provide strong promises to provide transparency, accountability, and participation all over the city. And at that point, actually, as an academician living in Ankara, that was our idea to establish a strong and functional citizen council to realize this participation endeavor, actually. So what happened at the end? We formed this citizen council, and actually, because I was, as an academician, working and following the citizen council experience all around Turkey in the last 15 years, I tried to mold all these information into the modeling of citizen council in Ankara, actually. So we learned from this huge experience and tried to define a new model for the capital city of Ankara. And it became successful since over 1,800 institutional representatives are a part of our General Assembly. There are around 5,000 volunteer citizens, 30 working groups, and 5 assemblies now in place. There are, of course, there were challenges in these 5 years because the city was so polarized in urban life. It was one of the most important challenges. Sometimes it was very difficult to realize deliberation under extreme polarization. The second problem was the scale and size of the city, actually, because Ankara is a 6 million metropolitan area. In 6 million cities, you need to invent new ways of doing deliberation or reminding people that participation is something good and deliberation is necessary. And the urban diversity is another thing, and how to facilitate that. Although Ankara is a capital city, we have many ethnic, kinship, religious, etc. Differences. And the methods, how to deal with deliberation, dissemination, how to realize a performative aspect, how to deal with aesthetics and public will, how to make public will look positive towards participation, something good. And as a result of 20 years of autocratic rule, the municipal and institutional culture was so stagnant. It was sometimes nearly very difficult to, persuade and make municipal officers take into consideration of what citizen council is doing. And being a capital city has its own challenges as well. So we defined at the beginning our working principles as we should be clear and transparent. We decided, because if you cannot make people think that you're sincere, it's not going anywhere. We should be aware of different scales of participation and the town councils, because there's this metropolitan level, district municipality levels, neighborhood levels, and street level. So how to transverse all these levels together is also an important thing. We need to take those into consideration. Interactions with stakeholders within and with the stakeholders is an important issue. Visibility, wide impact, and institutionalization is another issue. And we thought that no matter what we do, we should try to provide some social benefits through innovation, so that people think that this citizen council is doing something good, actually. By the way, if I'm if I couldn't finish my presentation, please notice me, and I'll stop at that point.
There are
So what? Yeah.
there are some questions. So do you want to take the questions from
Let's take them.
and
We might not have the time to at the end to finish. So let's have them, Aliye.
okay. Rick, you had a question. Can you ask?
Yeah, I put it in the chat, but happy to repeat it. I was very interested in the attributes of deliberation that you described in an earlier slide, particularly as it relates to the council. And those were listed as the definition of problems, options, aesthetics, techniques, and implementation. Maybe because I'm from New York and worked in New York City government for a while, resources, fiscal resources always were very high up on the list, often came first, you know, if certainly never as an afterthought in determining policy, especially environmental policy. You know, we would talk about green roofs, blue roofs, or solar panels on a roof, or why not, and we would get the why not because of fiscal reasons too often. How different is that in Turkey and in Ankara in particular? And what does the fiscal role, if any, of the council setup, how does that relate to municipal politics?
Yeah, actually, this is a very good question, Rick. The problem in Turkish local politics is that although there is a city council, not many deep discussions are happening in there. Usually there is a political balance and there is the majority in the hands of a political party, and usually it's been predefined that who's gonna decide what to do and what not to do. So this leaves nearly no space at all for deliberation or discussing alternatives. So this is where the citizen council comes to the picture, because since the people who are interested in discussing major problems in urban life in Ankara come together, form working groups, starts deliberating and discussing the issues, and at the end they form an advisory decision with a report. So when the citizen council send this report to the city council, they find a context actually and content that they probably did not think or debated before. So this is one way of getting some fiscal initiative, because for there I can give numerous examples where the idea is seen favorable by the city council as well. They decide to finance it. This is one way. The other way is sometimes the working groups deliberate and discuss the issues and then define something to be done in real life and directly get in contact with the municipal departments sometimes. And because we know that the municipal departments and the bureaucratic structure also is searching for ways to realize participation. This is also another point where the municipal structure get in contact with the citizen council, and with their budget they try to do things. But although I'm telling this story as something positive, there are limits, of course, because there are cases that our advisory decisions are approved, but later nothing happened because it wasn't a priority. There are also some examples where, for instance, I'm gonna tell in a few minutes in a very fast fashion that there are examples which we formulated a policy, send it to the municipal bureaucracy, they favored it, they implemented it, and put down a lot of money in it. So this is a very dynamic, very interactive process, and our major strength comes from the numbers, actually. As I told you, the City Council of Ankara, Metropolitan City Council, consists of something like 150 people. But in the Citizen Council, there are something like 2,000 people. So all these people are representing institutionally very strong stakeholders sometimes. There are also some citizens as well. Anyway, I hope this is enough. Maybe later on we can some other time discuss a little bit more about that. So this is our toolbox we try to define. I just want to mention just the trust issue. Trust is something very valuable nowadays in our world. We all know that, but even more valuable in Turkish situation because all the surveys show that people are not trusting the politicians anymore. So people are in search for people who are who have at least a certain level of dignity, a certain level of trustworthiness, actually. So trust is one of the backbones of our toolbox, and this is something we try to achieve by providing radical transparency tools and try to showcase everything we try to do actually. So what happened at the end? I told you about the numbers. Some of them we have sent 120 advisory decisions to the city council. Nearly 100% of them are unanimously approved by the city council. Half of them are in the way to implementation, half of them are not prioritized, some of them under project development. So this is the end result. And we tried at the first time in the history of Ankara, we tried participatory budgeting, but that wasn't a successful initiative. We lobbied for local policies like climate friendly city in the city council, and we hold the presidency of the Turkish Union of Citizen Councils, and this at the end brought us some international recognition through awards. Actually, this presentation I can be taken as a part of that. So şimdi now I'm going to try to show you very rapidly some examples. For instance, aesthetic aesthetic debate or deliberation is a very important discussion in the citizen council, because we noticed that although no matter what policy you define, you need to provide people an aesthetical dimension as well to be that policy to be embraced. So the citizen council, I'm passing all these just to give you the examples. We proposed opening up architectural competitions, and 5 architectural competitions were opened up by the municipality with the help of citizen council and academicians involved in the citizen council. And these are for the major public spaces of the city, like Ulus, which is the historical heart of the city, like Sıhhiye, which is again another part of the city. Or one of the very interesting examples was the street signs. We opened up a competition to define a special font, writing font for the city, and a redesign of the street signs. So this is you're seeing one of the implementation of these ones. So we can say that the real people could see the difference in the street. So we make some collaboration with the artists to realize murals, for instance, in the city, to increase the awareness and increase the belongingness, the sense of belongingness in the city. So these are some pictures from that experience. We also try to actively involve in redefining public space in the city center, one of which the most interesting examples of which is the Gençlik Parkı, the youth park activity area. Gençlik Parkı, for the ones living in Ankara, is a 100-year-old, a very significant public park in the city, but the park, especially during the pandemic, became derelict, became very bad, and people did not use this area anymore. So this area was very close to the citizen council building, and we decided that why not realize a participatory urban design process to revive this area. So this was how this area was. It was a closed space as well. So we have a
Professor
book.
Shahin, I am
Yes.
sorry, but we have to close at 1 o'clock sharp. And there was one more question from
Okay,
Len.
let's stop it here then. Maybe take the question, and maybe some other time I can complete my presentation, Aliye.
Absolutely sorry about that. And maybe people will buy the book.
Yeah, that was a good advertisement,
Finish.
isn't it?
Okay, Lance, why don't you ask your question?
Well, it wasn't so much a question. I have some comments
Yeah,
to,
please.
to relate. But first, I wanted to thank Savas and Faizan for an extraordinarily erudite presentation. I mean, you've given us quite the history of participation as it relates to, both the larger and the more local government, the complexity and the layering and the context of the participatory process, which I think we understand here. It's been, perhaps since the 60s in this country, 60 years that we've undertaken these activities through community design centers, community planning boards, competitions. But this is something in a way that we're learning even as our populations grow and our municipalities increase in complexity. So I think you've given us quite a long story. It's very interesting. My question that I prepared for you was to share with us what you had mentioned in the advertisement about what the design thinking part was. And I must say, I was gratified towards the end to see that what you introduced was being sort of actualized through those last, 10 or 15 slides. And I would ask you, if you would, since our recording will not stop slowly on those, if you would make the slide deck available to us, we could mount the slide deck along with the recording so that those that wanted to see the detail of those very good slides could be included.
Yes, I'm fast forwarding the slides while you talk.
Great. I also included in the chat for you the title of a book, Planning and Design Workbook for Community Participation. It's available through the City University of New York Library. You might find it a good resource. I'm not here to promote it, but I worked on it, and I think you will find that your 5 points are nicely reflected in the issues, policies, and consequences format that publication advocates to help community members understand and make decisions. So I think this is just an exchange. I've noticed over the last few Green Cities programs, we've had the chats not only be useful for questions, but to add information and content to the nature of the discussion. So there is so much more to discuss here. As Aliyah has said, we try to stick to our time for other people, so they'll come back. I look forward to seeing your information in greater detail. People will now know the book is available to delve more deeply into it. And I think you have made it clear that people who want to communicate with you about what you've presented are free to do so, and we'll make that information available. So with that, again, I don't want to extend more fully. I'll give the floor back to Aliyah. And again, I thank you for what you've offered.
Thank you, Dr. Shahin and Professor Erkep. I mean, this was an incredibly rich presentation, and there is so much more to this topic, many questions, many expectations. So To be continued is what I can say now. And thank you very much. And I hope everybody will get our book. Have a great day. And hopefully we will see you again.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Aliye, Lens, Rick, for this opportunity. I apologize for not using the time effectively and giving you the full picture, but as I told you at the beginning, it was such a diverse experience. I find it very difficult to summarize, but actually, I hope I give you a little taste of what happened and more in the book. Thank you very much.
Thank you.